What's up, Gifted family? Welcome to another episode of the show that is the GP YouTube. Just a reminder that if you support what we do here, make sure to go over to giftedperformance.com and sign up for our automated coaching service. For only $1 a day, you'll get access to 15 highly customized training programs, a macronutrient calculator, our meal planning feature that lets you build and save meals based on your macros, as well as access to our private Facebook group. All subscriptions help us in continuing to put out great content to get you to your fitness goals. Thanks for stopping by, and without any further delay, let's get into today's video. Enjoy.
Now we are live, another episode of the Gifted Performance podcast. He's on my left. Again, I know I said at the beginning of every single podcast, when it actually records, it just puts people in random places. So when you see it on YouTube and you're always like, oh, Ryan's always the big one, don't think it's because I'm vain and I'm trying to make myself the big one. I promise that Skype just randomly chooses. Am I the most handsome? Absolutely. Do I deserve to be the biggest? 100%. But still, I would much rather give the spotlight to our guest today, Nick Womble, someone that graduated from UCF with me. I'll always remember he saved me a spot in line at graduation because I was super late. He said, yo, just jump the line right here. And I was like, sweet. Nick, how are you?
Good, man. Appreciate you having me on.
And yeah, again, to my left, maybe right, top, who knows, who cares, is Mr. Tom Butler. Tom, how you doing today? Feeling good today?
All right.
Shirt looks good. We just say full disclosure, Nick missed the tie-dye memo, but there will be a part 2, and
Dude,
there will be a chance.
Tie-dye.
It is tie-dye. Wow, yo. When Jimble hears this, she's gonna be very upset with you. It's a gray tie-dye.
It's a great tie.
And shameless plug, you can get these very nice dark gray tie-dye, men's extra large. I think we have like one left. People really bought us out quick.
I'm not fit extra large though, that's for sure.
Back to actually the larges are the large might fit you. I don't know. You're kind of beefing up a little bit. Ooh, please stop. You're scaring away the viewers, all 6 of them. So Nick is here today to talk about his experience with athletic development. He has a very, very impressive resume when it comes to working with athletes of all levels. We're talking about young high school athletes, high school prodigies, college stars, people making their way into professional ranks, and those who are also currently professional athletes. Nick, I want to give you a chance to kind of give the people an introduction on yourself, education, certifications, where you've worked, what you've competed in, your interests, your endeavors, all that.
Yeah, well, that's a lot. So
it is.
Yeah, I guess we could start from like young ages. I like always was just into like lifting weights and training, whether it was even in a gym or not. I was the guy that was like climbing trees all the time and just like jumping around and just monkeying around pretty much even to this day. But I think that like led into my like love of just training the body and wanting to like master the body. I also was never really tall. So like from a young age, I was like, well, I'm not growing, so I'm going to get swole instead. And I'm going to make up for that. So that's kind of where the love of the gym just came, and everything just built off of that from a young age. Just constantly trying to just better my body, bigger myself, get bigger, faster, stronger, whatever that was. And honestly, throughout the whole process of it, I learned the wrong way to do the right way. And honestly, like I would never, like now knowing what I know now, I wouldn't go back and be like, I want to know what I know now, because I wouldn't have figured all this out if I didn't just explore it myself. I mean, everything I did in high school, wrong. Okay, well now I know, like, don't do that again. Okay, in college, you're getting knowledge, you're going to school, you're getting all these degrees and certifications. You're like, okay, I know stuff. And then you get stuck on that and you're like, you know what? Maybe this isn't all it either. And like just constantly like trying to find like, okay, well, if I'm doing this, but I'm getting hurt here, like I'm missing something here. So continue to just like never think like you know everything and just constantly explore the body. And I think I'm going to be doing this for the next 50 years, just constantly be like, man, like what I did 10 years ago is not smart. Like, okay, we can do this better. And just if we're not doing that, then we're probably going backwards in 10 years or getting some sort of surgery here. And then, I mean, when we get that, it's just like a battle. You're just fighting with yourself to even get back into like constant training. And consistency is going to be that like number one key anyway. So for me, like before even the schooling and any of that, I was just constantly on a battle of just like learning the body. And school, well, you know, the whole UCF thing, like undergrad, we did our masters. Were we in undergrad and masters together?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, we might have like wrote the whole thing out at the same time. I was there 11 to 16, I think, and that was when like the whole thing switched though for me. Before it was like training just to train the body. I didn't know there was science to training. And like just I thought it was just you pick things up and you put them down. So getting to like UCF for the first time, I was just like mind blown to like what training really is, and that there was professions in it. I didn't know you could train people like for a living. So like I always had the dream of owning a gym, so it's just funny because I own a gym now, but like it's not what I envisioned. Like I thought I was gonna own like an LA Fitness type gym, like just a gym. Like I just wanted to have a gym when I was like a high school kid. But then like I got to UCF and I'm like, well, you can get like paid to train people like athletes in the military. I actually wanted to do the military first. That was like the first thing that interested me in sport performance. I was like, okay, you can train the military. Like that's pretty cool. What better people to work with and like a more rewarding job than to train the military. So that was like the number one goal for a while, was to train military. And then I got linked up with UCF athletics when I needed to do my practicum. So for undergrad, I was trying to figure out what to do. I don't remember when it was actually. I just decided I needed an internship of some sort. I was like, all right, athlete sounds cool. Had a contact into getting with Coach Ellis, who we talked about. So I reached out to him. He's like, yeah, sure, come by. So just like that, I was starting up, and that was like my first taste into the collegiate realm, which is the realm I like tried to stay in for the longest time period. I was pursuing that for pretty much from like 2016 till 2020. And that's just a field that I think it needs to be improved upon now that I've been through it. I think it gets this look that you're like these big prestigious schools with these incredible weight rooms and these insane staffs and all this stuff. But I feel like a lot of them are stuck, like we've talked about, in the old, just kind of beat you down, break your body, test your will, and just kind of just, I mean, it's old school. It's really what it is. And now some schools are really jumping the gun. They're getting like sports science labs, and they're getting all into this, you know, the science side of it, and they're testing everything, and they're testing this and they're testing that. And I think it's like taking athletics to another level. We're seeing people coming out of college doing stuff that's just like unheard of, or even younger than that, like high school kids coming out just doing insane things. And you're just like, how is this even possible? It's like the training's just getting better. And as the training continues to get better, I honestly, like, this is going to sound crazy, and I'm saying this on like an actual recording, but like, I think there's going to be a time when we think like a 3 or 4 or 5 foot vertical is like crazy, but we're going to start seeing like 6, 7, and 8 foot verticals. I think the body is literally physically capable of that, but we do not know how to access it. We don't know how to train it. We don't know how to get to it yet. But I think the body like has that power and that energy stored in it. It just needs to be accessed. And I think like, I always think of like a car with a governor, and how like it'll hold you back. I think our brain is that governor. And I think that as long as we can continue to like somehow manipulate that throughout years and years, who knows how this is going to be done. But like, I feel like the body could be manipulated in such ways that you can continue just the levels of increase should never stop. We always should just be able to continue progressively overload our body to a point where, I mean, there is an end point, but I don't know if we know what that end point truly is yet. And I think that as long as we just like keep pushing the brain's limits, who knows like what the body is truly capable of. That was a crazy tangent, but yeah, the body, I think, again, we're having like 8 foot. I'm going to have a first 8 foot vertical. Just wait for it. When these hernias stop hitting me, we're going to get insane here in a little bit, but
I think that's an interesting point. It's because you hear people all the time talk about athletic development and how it's like approaching that asymptote. Like, yes, athletes are improving, but the magnitude of their improvement just isn't what it used to be. Like, we're getting this influx of talent into sport, and we're seeing these freak outliers, but they're getting fewer and further between. But it sounds like you've got a different opinion of that. Thomas, do you have anything to say there?
I wonder if, you know, obviously it's a matter of training, and we see the really rapid development. We talked on another podcast about like the raw powerlifting and how the records just really exploded over the past like 5 or 6 years. And so that was due to like influx of new athletes. But then I think that one place that the West especially has been really far behind the rest of the world is with the long-term athletic development model. And so, because, we don't put people in like special sports camps to, at 5 or 6 years old, start developing for careers in athletics. We try to let stuff happen sort of organically. And those long-term athletic development models aren't really explored here. And we've got like 340 million people in this country, so we've got the fifth largest population on Earth. We've got a base of people to which we can produce a fair amount of really spectacular athletic, naturally athletic people, but we just haven't really gotten lined up with the lifetime of development that it takes to get to those outer limits of what people are capable of. And you look at like what the Chinese, the Koreans are doing in weightlifting right now, and just absolutely insane things on a regular basis. And it's because those guys and girls are, they start training for that. They're selected at like 4 years old, and they're in the path. I think we'll continue to see that as sports science sort of trickles down to the high school and club and middle school level. And you see in like Texas, just for instance, with football in Texas, a lot of the developmental programs, the Pee Wee and Pop Warner and middle school and high school programs in an area are all sort of integrated. They share a common philosophy. And so, even if the sports science methodologies are maybe not the tightest and most productive practices, you have kids getting into high school and they've been playing in the same offensive or defensive system for 10 years. And so you've got 10th graders that are playing at a level, they started playing flag football when they were 4 or 5 years old, running the same plays that they were running in Pee Wee and middle and high school. So by the time they get to being varsity high school players, they've got as much football experience as, a guy who's like a second or third year pro in other parts of the country.
That's great.
So, and that's why, parts of California and Florida and Texas are just so absolutely dominant in high school football. And it's starting to happen in Georgia and the Atlanta area too. It's the length of developmental arc. You've got so many years before the body doesn't do it anymore. And so the earlier you start, the higher that peak can be.
And I was, it's somewhat of a thought experiment for me, and it's it's a big part of what Nick does in terms of like his philosophy of like keeping athletes healthy, like keeping them on the field. A lot of that preventative stuff, that's going to keep them on the field and performing. It's always been a thought experiment of mine to say, like, what if, because there's a lot of kids that are getting hurt as they come up in training just because of how much training they're doing year round and how little variety they're doing. So if we take a more varied approach throughout the year and keep these kids healthier, are we going to see a big increase in talent because they're actually able to spend the entire year training?
Yep. That's like my biggest argument to it is like, we see freak athletes, but like, has one person ever just gone through like adolescence and pubescent years and all that stuff and just trained the perfect way? Like, what could that person physically do? Who knows? Because like, I don't think anyone's done it yet. And so as we continue to slowly like train better and better and better and get these kids starting at the right times and not going through those years of like mistakes that we had to go through to figure out the wrong way, like, what is possible for these kids? Who knows? Like, we're going to start seeing, we're seeing already like 18-year-olds and 17-year-olds touching up as much as 100 miles per hour pitching. It's like, that's insane. Like, this guy is still like child realistically in the physical capabilities of his body. Like, he's not genetically even close to his prime yet. He's still growing. He's still understanding his body. Like, what is that guy going to look like when he's 28 if he's throwing 100 already? It's like, if he doesn't get hurt. Like, that's the key factor. Can he train from 18 to 28 without having a year off of like something? Like, what could be possibly? I mean, that guy's going to be throwing. I joke around all the time. Like, I have a guy that's going to throw 120. He's like, it's not possible. And I was like, yeah, well, until you do it, it's not possible. He's like, okay. Like, thinks I'm kidding. But it's like they said the same thing about people running a sub 4-minute mile, and then one guy does. They literally said your heart would explode, and then the guy does it, and then everywhere people are just popping out sub 4-minute miles. You just got to know you can do it. Now again, like maybe he never touches 120, but if he starts believing like, okay, like if I don't mess up for the next 8 years and I keep training right and I keep this and that, like I'm gonna throw 120. Like okay, maybe he hits 112. Well, that's still unheard of. And again, I just think that our body is capable of more if we can accumulate more years of don't get hurt. Like just do a little bit every year, and over 8 years, that little bit has become a lot, and it's really built off itself. And it's just we got to have that long-term approach. I'm not necessarily saying you need to be in one sport from a young age and master that sport. Like I think you need to do tons of sports. I think the more sports you can do, the better. And I'm not even talking real sports. I'm talking like go surf, go skateboard, go rock climb, go like other like human body sports. Like I think parkour is insane. Like weirdly gymnastics type stuff, like master the body. And then when you go play a sport, it's like the sport's the easy part. The human body is the hard part. So once you got that mastered, you're just picking a couple specific skills and you're just getting to master them. So now you're just throwing a ball over and over and over again, and you just mastered it because your body's mastered it. And then that's where again, like who knows what's going to happen when we can accumulate 8 years like that. I think again, 120 or 110 or whatever it may be is physically possible if we can get 10 good years built up on it. So that's the trial and error from here on out. I mean, it's just a lot of it is trial and error. It's like you go and you explore a little bit, you play around with something, you know, that wasn't it. Let's go back to the drawing board. All right, let's play with this. Where do you feel weak at? You know, maybe it's a transfer of force. Maybe it's, you know, you have all this power in your hips, but your wrist is super weak. And you're trying to hold a ball down here, and you got all this force coming in, and power is being lost in this little ripple effect that you don't even notice is happening, but it's happening because there's just no transfer from the wrist to the ball now. So now what looks like a 96-mile-an-hour pitch should have been 104 if it just would have just held better and transferred better. And so we're looking at the thing like, well, you need more hip power, you need more of this, you need more separation here. And it could be as small as like, well, you just need to get a little stronger wrist. And all of a sudden there's like 4 more velo right there. And again, I think people are looking so big, and I think it's like way smaller than that. Like break it down to the deepest little parts of the body. What is the weakest link? What is the smallest little thing that's going to fail and cause the whole thing to kind of crumble? Right? Because if again, all we're doing is movement is like transfer of force, like in sprinting, whatever it is, it's force into the floor. That floor is going to push back into you one way or another. And hopefully you can handle that force and it can propel you to the directions that you're creating, whether it's from your ankle, your knee, or your hip, whatever it may be. But you're just trying to put your body in positions to do the work for you almost. And so I'm starting to learn over the last like even 6 months, really, like less is more. Like the less I can put on my body, but put my body in also weird positions to create the force itself, the better I'm going to be off than if I just had to load up, 500 pounds to get the stimulus. I want to be able to create that stimulus without 500 pounds. And like, how can I teach my body to work as if I had 500 pounds on me, but I don't have 500 pounds on me? And again, that's where I'm continually thinking the brain is the key factor to like this limit of like, this is all I'm going to let you push. This is all I think you're capable of. And so I think, how can I tap into the brain? And you may like, okay, what would you think is the best way to like, just like tell your brain to start doing more? It would be isometrics. And so I'm going to start dabbling. And again, this is like theory right now, but I'm dabbling in more isometric work at specific joint angles to like, okay, well, this is where I'm weakest in my, let's say my vertical. I just really feel like my like terminal knee extension is really weak. Well, like, okay, I need to max out my terminal knee extension. We're typically training stuff like that in a step down or, a TKE or something very like rehab-y, right? Now, I love the rehab purpose of it and that volume and just like what it's doing for the knee itself. But like, how strong can I be at that terminal knee extension as well? Because I feel like the stronger we are at our end ranges, the better our body's going to be like, you know what? That was where he was weakest. He's a lot stronger. Okay, muscles, you can contract a little more now. Let's train you a little harder now. Like you've advanced to the next level and you can train that level now. Yeah, this is like, you're getting me on some crazy theories right now. I'm just spitting them out right now. But yeah, that's how my training has been evolving, like that thought process. Now, granted, don't get away from strength training. I'm all about the big lifts,
No, I think it's a good tangent, and I think it contrasts well with kind of the standard issue strength conditioning training that you see at the collegiate level that says like, if athlete A is stronger and exercises A, B, and C, they will then be stronger on the field. They can take that strength that they gained. They went from, a 550-pound back squat to a 600-pound back squat. Now you're going to be a better running back because of that. But they're ignoring some of the individualized stuff that you're talking about. Isometric strength at specific joint angles, laxity in certain joints that may be hindering performance on the field. And do you think that's an issue with modern S&C methods, is that we're so focused on numbers and kind of performance in the gym that we forget about performance on the field and maybe longevity of the athletes?
Yeah, 100%. That's like, I think the collegiate realm and above is honestly doing the right things. In their mind, they're not inadvertently trying, I'm trying to mess you up like athlete. They're doing everything they can to make you a better athlete and what they believe. Again, I just think that they're missing something because they're chasing these numbers. And a lot of it comes back to a political thing. Like, if you're not performing in the weight room and your athletes aren't performing in the weight room and you don't have a metric to show somebody, they're going to fire you. So there's like this fire under them, like, well, I have to produce something. So I need to be maxing these guys out. I need to be testing them, like whatever it is, because I need to be showing results. Because if I'm not, then I'm not doing my job. And I think sometimes there's like, 6 months of training to a year of training where you look like you're going backwards for a little bit. But there's changes happening and there's development happening. And the human body is complicated. You don't just master something in a semester. Like, we're trying to master the most complicated thing on the planet, the human body. And it's like, I try to like use the example of like learning a new language. Like, you don't just jump in there speaking sentences and jumping into a country and you're just flowing. Like, you're learning like the basic foundations of the language first, the pronouns, all those little grammatical things, and then you're piecing things together. And over years, you can now speak a new language. Like, that's the body and a skill too. Like, a front squat is that. Take 4 years to master the front squat, right? Let's start with just like the basic hinge or like the front rack hold or whatever it may be, and learning how to sit in the midfoot and just learning the ins and outs of a squat. And then, okay, maybe the next year you're developing whatever it may be, but you're mastering a skill. And I think we go into a gym being like, okay, well, I need that 500 squat to go to 600, or else I didn't get that guy better. Well, what if I made that guy lose 10 pounds of fat that he didn't need on him that was weighing him down, and I added 5 pounds of muscle? Now he looks like he lost 5 pounds. You're like, well, he's smaller. He needs to be bigger. He's a linebacker. Okay, but he's also running 0.2 of a second faster on his 40, and he's got 4 inches on his vertical. And it's like, he's playing at a better weight now. He's a better athlete now. And I think sometimes we're even chasing like physical numbers. Like, well, this guy needs to weigh this much. It's like, maybe to a point, okay, I don't need a 180-pound linebacker in the NFL, but when you're fighting, well, he needs to be 225 because he's 215 right now. Like, and I'm going to take the better moving athlete. I'm going to take the guy that's going to get to the ball quicker, or he's going to make that play because he's more explosive now. And sometimes we're chasing factors of like, oh, I need my front squat to go up. It's like, I can make your vertical go up without your front squat going up. I can increase your reach, right? I can increase how far you can extend over your head now. You don't have to jump higher to touch higher, right? People chase a number in sports as like the vertical. It's like, that's important, but I care about how high you can get. If you've once touched 9 foot, now you're touching 9.6, that tells me your vertical went up 6 inches. Right? Maybe your vertical went up 2 inches of that, and 4 inches of it was opening up like your QL and allowing you to get a greater reach and extending your length and your lat. And you can now just reach overhead 2 extra inches as well. So like, and on top of, let's say I increase your shoulder extension. And so now you have more power in your arm swing, and you're getting more vertical power from arm swing versus from leg power. So there's just so many other factors that are going to make you a better athlete. And people, I think, just have got stuck in the old ways of like, okay, squat for lower body power if you want to jump higher. There's a lot of other ways I can get you to jump higher without making you squat heavier. I think I'm just trying to find different ways to do that without putting stress on the body. Again, it's like, maybe the squat's going to make the vertical go up, but there's also a cost that went on that body. And again, football is a good example. Like, man, you're getting beat up. Like you even said, there's like a time limit on that. It's like, you're starting as soon as you can because there's only so long your body can handle that. It's like, okay, well, let me make sure when I'm training, I'm not building into that decrease anymore, right? Like, I need you to be performance ready, but at the same time, I need to make sure you have longevity. And a lot of that comes in, like, if I can pick 2 exercises or the same exercise for the same being, but I can manipulate in a way where one time I'm getting an exercise that's going to yield 100% results, right? And that sounds great. Let's say front squat. Everyone loves it. I love it. Probably my favorite lift. I think it should be an incredible high number on your front squat. There's a skill to a deep squat. Like, go look at any child, any baby, they just hang out in a deep squat. All right. As we get older, the stronger we can be there, the better we're going to be everywhere else above that, because that's the deepest part. Right. So anything above that is now easy. But if I train that, I get 100%, gains from it, but it took 80% effort. But the other thing I could pick is maybe like, a single leg elevated, like pistol squat type thing that just really VMO, like cyclist style squat. So now I'm using body weight, but all right, I can get 50% increase on it, but it only costs 10% of my body. Right. I'm yielding 40% over 20. Like, I'm going to pick that one, because that one over the course of 10 years is going to get me so much farther. And I'm going to be constantly getting better without all this damage and stress on my body. So I think that's where like strength conditioning could use a nice little flip flop. Like, their thought process is great. And I was there 2 years ago, and it's taken my own injuries to realize there's a smarter way to do this. Like, I'm dealing with like 3 hernias basically in the past year and a half. I don't know if I told you, I have an umbilical one now too. And now I'm just like chilling. I'm just waiting to explode and have that one taken care of also. But I'm not able to train in a sense of like, I can't weightlift anymore. I can't heavy lift anymore. Like, it's basically saying anything that I have outside of, I'm going to increase my chances of getting the hernia, right? Or increasing it. So my methods of training have had to be smarter now. I'm training like the little parts of my foot more, my ankle, and opening up ranges of motion, and trying to increase like strength at my end ranges. And now my vertical is higher than it's ever been before. So there's something to that, right? Like, I'm not the strongest I've ever been, but I'm also the most explosive I've ever been. So there's more to strength, or more to athleticism and power and all that than strength. And I think a lot of people just chase strength. They just chase the big number,
Yeah, I think there's an issue, especially with big time strength and conditioning, where you see there's problems of really quantifying sport performance and attributes, especially in team sports, where they're not stopwatch sports. There's not like a thrower could go out and say, I threw 64, and last month I threw 63, so I got better, or time trials improving or something. But you got a guy that's a field sport athlete, where it's a tactical sport with a physical component, and it's hard to really quantify the improvements in their performance. Mm-hmm. So you see a lot of the old school coaches kind of default to these surrogate endpoints, like the back squat or the bench press or the 40, and they've got these old school metrics that they kind of go in under the kind of vulgar assumption that these things are a one-to-one direct transfer. And like you said, like, you haven't lifted months and your vertical's gone up. Or like I was talking to Ryan the other week, if you were to look at Ryan and I both do CrossFit and high intensity competitive exercise, and I went like 3 months without squatting anything heavy because I just didn't care about it when this whole quarantine thing started, and I hit my PR snatch for like some stupid complex just out of nowhere on like a Wednesday, and it's like, well, how did that happen? Because I'm not stronger. I haven't lifted a heavy back squat in like 115 days, yeah. And it's because we're bad, especially those of us who came up obsessed with the weight room, and sports were like kind of grew out of training versus training growing out of sports, and I think that paradigm for a lot of strength coaches is kind of a problem, because their first obsession was not the sport. It was probably training for the sport. And the sport came along as like something to give the training purpose, and to guide those decisions, versus the sport being the main idea and the training being supplementary to the sport. And so, people get caught up on the, like I said, surrogate endpoints. And we do it in my quote unquote real job. We have all these metrics we look at. I work in the business field. I'm a business analyst. And, we're always trying to look at our metrics and say, this tells us something, but does it tell us what we think it tells us, or does it tell us something else? Because, you're only as good as your data, and your data is only as good as its relevance to what you're trying to discern from it.
Yeah.
So, I think that's the main contradiction that people in the field maybe. You see a lot of guys now starting to talk about this, especially guys who've come up with Red Line Bonder Choke and really grok to that sort of paradigm where the sport is only sort of tangential to what we do in training, and the effectiveness of the training is only as good as it transfers to the sport.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to the sport again, like you even said. Like, if I'm training a weightlifter, clearly, like, I'm going to train the big lifts. Like, there's a different needs for that. But it's like, if I'm training a 15-year-old soccer player, and she's a female, and she's, super deficient in her hamstrings, quads, like whatever it may be, it's like, I'm gonna need to train her as an athlete for her demands. Like, her hips need to be insanely strong. Her hamstrings need to be insanely strong. Honestly, everything needs to be insanely strong in their lower half of her body, just because of the demands of that sport. Like, a lot of the young female athletes I'm working with have either had 1, 2, or even up to 3 ACLs already before they're even graduated high school. And to me, that's not acceptable. That's and they were all non-contact injuries, right? So that on top of it is just like, there's no reason you should be planting your foot and tearing an ACL. Your body is so much stronger than that, and for you to be that weak, it's like, that's a disgrace to the body.
Well, and you wonder how much of that is, again, people mistake strength in a specific context, like, a 1-rep or a 5-rep or a 10-rep max back squat. They say, well, their legs are strong. Or even if you take it to like a 5-rep max reverse lunge, something that's maybe a little more sport specific, and or resembles the sporting act a little more. But does that really directly correlate one-to-one with resilience and injury prevention? And so I think that there's a tendency to want to drive towards numbers that are easy to evaluate. And so, like, you can take an athlete and walk into the gym today and find out their 5-rep max on some lift, whether that's a bilateral classic movement or some more, esoteric joint angle movement. And that's an easy thing to evaluate. It's cheap. But really, it's not telling us what we want to know. What we want to know is whether the program is effective. Is you have to, do a, historical trend of the injury, and so you can't do forward-looking projections on how effective your program is being. And I think that's something that coaches struggle with, because they don't want to look at, like, they want to know if their team is going to be good next season. They don't want to look back and say, oh yeah, what we did worked. They want to say what we're doing is working.
Yeah.
So, they probably don't favor that.
I think a lot of it comes back to, for these youth athletes at least, and I know I don't want to get into this too much because this might have to be a second time talk when we get into
part 2.
Yeah, but when it comes like the youth and stuff, I think, and I'm probably gonna, if this ever gets out, someone's gonna get some mad at this, but a lot of the problems are coaches. They over coach, not coach like just cueing. They just work them. They work them too much. I mean, they're in season. Soccer players are in season pretty much at least 10 out of 12 months out of the year. And this is like from middle school or maybe even younger on. Like, they're just playing all year round. They never break. Sometimes they have seasons overlapping. Baseball's notorious for that too, having seasons overlapping, just constantly playing. And so it's like them, or like in games, like hearing of coaches playing people just like deep into the game when they're constantly winning and they already have like, maybe scholarship offers, and just like, man, do you have this kid's best interest at heart or not? Or like, hey, we need you to play this state championship game, but you're only 4.5 months out of ACL. And it's like, and then all of a sudden you're hearing of them tearing it again or tearing the other one. It's like, was that really that girl's fault, or was she trusting somebody to advise her and help her? And hey, like, or they're going to a trainer and they're thinking that trainer's helping them, but he's just having you jump on a Vertimax the whole session, and at 5 months out, you're already, playing again. It's like, I'm not saying you can't be ready in 5 months, right? I'm working with a girl that's about to head out to Ole Miss right now with her 3rd ACL, and she's 8 weeks out. The things she can do already is insane. But I also had the pleasure of training with her for 4 or 5 months before her ACL surgery. She put on 15 pounds during that process, got to the point where the doctors didn't even think she needed ACL surgery. Her knee felt so strong. They didn't believe she had an ACL tear until they got the MRI. And it's just that if we can just, like, again, prepare the body for what it needs to do. And like we worked on ranges of motion, taught the knee how to move, got rotation back at the knee joint, just let her like learn her body before the surgery. That at like 6 weeks out, they were cutting her down to 1 day of PT already. They didn't really have much to do for her. Like, I do think the body is capable of recovering very fast, but that's like far and in between. And then you have to be doing everything right to be getting there. This girl trains harder than, I mean, her mindset, she's going to do insane things at Ole Miss. But it takes a lot of work. And I think a lot of times people go to a trainer or go somewhere or go to even a physical therapist. Sometimes I think their methods are very safe and they're afraid to like actually attack the problem and push for growth. I think sometimes when we were seeing there could be a 6-month recovery on something, it really should be 4 months if we would have just attacked the problem a little bit sooner. But yeah, so I think, again, youth are just sometimes getting thrown into the fire and they're trusting a coach, they're trusting a trainer, they're trusting a PT, whatever it may be. And we just need to have better people out there that are actually truly helping the youth, because there's no reason a 17-year-old should have 3 ACL tears already. I mean, I don't think any human should ever have that, but let alone a 17-year-old girl. It's crazy.
There's actually good data out of the USOC that tracked trends in training time versus injury rate, and kind of exactly what you're talking about. Training time goes up year round. Amount of the macrocycle spent training for the sport has gone up. Rate of injury has also gone up, and that's not what we should see. If you're training more, you should be getting better and getting injured less. But we're not correcting that trajectory. You've still got youth athletes that are playing on, their high school team, their travel team, their AAU team. They've got these 4 teams that they're playing on, and you look at their schedule, and it's like, all right, well, you've got 30 hours of practice and game every week. How are you surviving? How are you recovering? And we're losing so many great athletes to this.
Oh, agreed. I mean, this area, believe it or not, Melbourne produces an insane amount of athletes, like high level athletes. We have multiple first round baseball draft picks coming out of here on a regular basis. Just D1 athletes popping out the yin over here. There's just so many good athletes, but it's like, what if a third of them keep getting hurt too soon or something like that? It's like, we might have the next Michael Jordan in this county. It's like, we just got to make sure this kid doesn't get hurt. Like, I've heard of, basketball players in this area females being recruited by UConn in South Carolina right now. We're talking like the best teams in the nation. People are being recruited, and she's in 9th grade, right? So it's like, there's young athletes they're basically saying, hey, like, just don't mess up in the next 3 years, and you have this is yours, right? And a lot of them are going to mess up in the next 3-4 years. Like, that basketball team, I mean, basketball teams in general, female athletes, I think basketball and soccer for females are like the 2 highest things I'm seeing of ACL tears. And again, that's all like non-contact injuries. So we just have to attack the body in like a specific way that those injuries are now reduced. I'm not saying freak accidents don't happen. Things happen still. But our goal is, like you said, is if we can be smarter with our training and there's evidence that shows this, we need to listen to that evidence and we need to do something about it, right? If we're not changing it, if we're not like affecting them, what is that like quote about insanity when you do the same thing and expect different results? That's what's happening. We're getting all these results and people are just doing the same thing anyways, and they're not changing anything. And until people are going to do something about it, maybe risk their career or risk their job spot to actually help an athlete, then things won't change. And me as like a small private sector guy, like, I'm not going to make an impact until things start rolling, or maybe somehow I get out there, whatever it may be. But my role right now is I'm not going to make that impact. What has to happen is the pro level has to change. The Division I level has to change. That's the ones that they have the high social media followings. Everyone's following them, whatever they do. Like, some of these big school weightlifting coaches that have like, you probably seen them. They have like followings on Instagram. Like, they're like Insta famous as well as coaches. It's like, they're not, I don't know. It's not about that, man. It's not about like having fun games and just like, let's see how many biceps and triceps we could do every week. Like,
hating on Tom's boy, coming after Tom's boy.
Listen, I just can't. To me, it's like, it's got to be that though. It's become a show, and it's like strength and conditioning isn't a show. It's like, you got this fancy weight room, you got all sick stuff. It's like, dude, like, you have the opportunity to make insane athletes. You're being given the best, like, physically genetic athletes you probably could ever have. It's like, create a monster for 4 years. Now, granted, what people do in high school on kind of screws a lot of that up, because that would be the biggest thing that I saw going in the collegiate setting is how bad athletes come in. It's like, it is very hard for a D1 strength coach to develop an athlete when they're fixing things for 4 years. It's like, you might want to train this guy, but it's like, you can't train the guy the way you want to train him because of what he has to offer right now. So if he would have done maybe just light workouts, whatever, I don't even care what it was. He could have stretched for the last 4 years in high school. Like, just give a coach an opportunity to make you good. And so I think a lot of it comes back to just not having the right people to train youth athletes. When the youth development changes, that's when we're going to start seeing a freak increase in some insane athletes, where numbers we even didn't know were unheard of touching, or people they're just doing on the regular. But it's going to start from a youth age.
Yeah, so for context, Nick also, he went from UCF. You went directly from UCF to Clemson, right?
No, I did like a year and a half at the private sector, like basically when
okay.
I worked for a guy. But like, I didn't like that at all. Like, we didn't work clash right. Like, obviously I'm like working for a guy. So it's like, I think a certain way. And at this time, like, if I would have thought the way I think now, like this guy and I would have worked there like maybe a month before I even could have made it, because we just wouldn't have seen eye to eye on like anything training wise. And it's just like, it's hard for me to train people when I don't believe in what I'm doing. Like, even if I have to do somebody else's programs, like I want to train somebody. So I've had issues with clients, sometimes coming in with a pre-existing notice of like, this is what I've done. I used to squat 500, I used to do this, and I threw 95 when whatever it may be. Well, it's like, okay, you can do that. I'm not stopping you. But if you're going to train here, this is how we're going to train. And like, if you're not okay with that, then that's fine. But like, you just have to go train somewhere else then. Because don't expect me to like just back squat you heavy because you want to. Like, I'm going to give you what I truly believe is the best option to get you better and get you back to throwing that way, but not get you there, but keep you there. Like, it's not about just getting back to throwing 95. It's like, can you sustain throwing 95? Because then if you do that, then you're making that fat contract. But if you get hurt every 6 months, then it doesn't matter about getting there. It's like, can you stay doing that? Can you perform at that level for the next 10 years? I don't know. People, again, it's the world's view of I want it right now.
That's the most frustrating conversation to have with people, and working and top level athletics. I'm sure that you've had it with people all the time. It's like, well, I've always done this and it's led me to this. And you just want to like fucking grab them and shake them and be like, you have succeeded in spite of yourself, you moron. I'm going to make you better.
Yeah, literally. That's like, you've made it there. Like, thankfully you've made it. I don't know how your body hasn't blown up yet.
Seriously.
All right. So let me make sure you stay here. Okay. Cause I've had a guy come in and I'm literally looking at him. I'm assessing him and I'm like, man, like, I'm gonna be honest, this is not okay. Straight up in session 1, like, this is not good. But I was like, this is the exciting thing. You're an insane athlete already. By the standards of your sport, you're a freak. And this is what your body gives me to work with. I was like, be excited, man, because you're going to get really scary. Like, really scary if this is already what we're at. Like, this is going to get fun. I was like, just trust it. Like, we're going to have to redevelop your whole body, because right now it's not helping you. Like, I want your body to do the work for you. And the more I'm learning about pitching, I was never a baseball player, but it's funny that baseball is the sport I probably work with the most now. And the more I'm learning with pitching is more about, like, again, transferring force and letting your body just kind of do the work for you. You're trying to set yourself up in positions to where, like, you don't actually have to throw a ball. You're just letting the body kind of throw the ball for you. You just have to put yourself in these specific positions at such a quick amount of time and these hard angles. And I mean, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying you're calm doing it, but like, a lot of people are aggressively throwing a ball. Like, you ever try to like throw a ball harder? It's like worse. That's what pitching is. Like, you're not trying to throw the ball hard. You're trying to like set yourself up to throw the ball hard. But it comes back to just learning the body. And the better we can like learn the body, the better we can master a skill, whatever that skill. It could be juggling. I don't care what it is. You having a better, supination of your wrist, and you can, save and catch one ball that you might have failed. Like, it could be something as stupid as that, but it matters. Like, those little details do matter, especially at a high level.
When I coach weightlifters, I try and tell them the same thing on the snatch. It's like, people think, all right, if I'm just more aggressive with the snatch, if I just rip it off the ground harder, it will get overhead easier. And it's like, no, like 95% of the snatch is just like, I need your body to be in the right position at the right time. And then for that last 5%, we apply a lot of force and then everything just lands exactly where it needs to be.
You're like,
And it's the same thing with like a golf swing, as well.
Agreed.
The harder you try to swing at that, and that was always my problem with golf. It was like I would get in my backswing and I'd be like, oh fuck yeah, I'm gonna destroy this thing. I'm gonna beat the brakes off this ball, and it would either one miss, two divot, or just go in a direction that I was not pleased with.
Agreed.
I had a track coach that I volunteered at a local high school with a couple years ago, and we worked with his athletes. I just helped with basically running practice and did it for the purpose of learning from him. He's got 35 years of experience coaching a bunch of D1 athletes and Olympians.
Yeah.
And one of the big things he drilled these kids on, from the very start was that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And if you skip slow or smooth, your fast is not going to be very fast.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is fast, it's going to be fast in the wrong direction. And that's really, I think that applies. Is the more you bear down on the bat or the club or the barbell or whatever else versus directing your energy appropriately.
Agreed.
The quicker you lose it. I had a back to your point about refining and the small improvements. I have a metaphor, I guess, that I've heard years back, and I think, the more I learn and the more I see and the more I continue to grow as a coach, the more sense it makes is that, the body and athletic development is a series of buckets, and each physical capacity is a bucket. And once it's full, it's full. And the amount that each capacity is required for each sport, it varies by sport. A football player may need more absolute strength or muscle mass than a soccer player or a tennis player. But once you've filled it up, you're there. You don't really get a whole bunch of extra benefit. And I think that as you continue to fill those buckets, you talk about the early development, the gross motor learning, and the things that you want to acquire while the nervous system is still really plastic and can be trained at a high level. As you get through adolescence and the anaerobic system starts to develop and be trainable, there's various points at which different levels of training are appropriate for an athlete, both in terms of their training age and where they are in their sporting career, and also their absolute age based on their physiology.
Right.
And by the time that a lot of these athletes get to the college or the professional level, they're either, the things that they can really do for their nervous system, the amount of improvement they can get is really limited. The amount of improvement on their VO2 max, it largely is going to be what it's going to be. If they haven't developed it and built the floor, their individual capacity, it's not going to improve by 20%. You're going to get a 5% improvement, maybe tops, over the course of the rest of their career.
Yeah.
But the things that when they get to that level matter are the small details, because you've already got 95% of your athlete by the time they're 20 years old.
Agreed.
They're 95% of the athlete that they're
doing the wrong thing at that point. They're like you said with the bucket. They're like, they filled up the strength bucket. That kid's already kind of filled up that bucket pretty full. It's like, all right, stop hammering that bucket and start filling into the bucket of flexibility, mobility, because now he's got 100% of strength and 50% of the range. Let's give you the other 50 and start training that now. And,
like training becomes, I think it's cliche at this point, but training becomes really the maintaining all of those prior capacities, within a certain threshold, and really just making sure that they're inoculated to the stress that they're going to see during their techno-tactical
correct
training, because what they are in the weight room or on the Vertimax or on the track is only a portion of what they're going to be on the field.
Agreed.
And when you get them on the field, there's all of these sport-specific items. Linebacker is not just his bench press or his 40 or his shuttle. It's his ability to read, diagnose, tackle, and bring the opposition to the ground. And those things are things that they have to be physically prepared for to improve.
Yeah, like even thinking like for a linebacker, man, it's like they're so constant about, bench press and this and that. It's like, man, like I want your grip strength to be insane. I was like, how you're literally fighting off 300-pound men, just jamming them and grabbing them and trying to redirect them. Again, if you can be so strong in your pull and your core and all this stuff, but if your hand is weak, that big rip is lost and you're not transferring that force anymore. So it's like, I don't care how good your bench press is. Like, again, it needs to be good, but like if that force that you have and you obtain now can't be transferred into whatever object it is that you're moving or using or attacking, then you're weak. than your biased standards of what truly, like, again, on the field, that's where it will show. You'll be like, well, that guy, man, he's got all the tangibles, but he doesn't play like so-and-so. It's like, maybe it's because so-and-so actually has like strong wrists and he's actually transferring the force. And he may not be as strong or look as physically demanding, but he plays the game better. And that's sometimes you just can't be like, well, I don't know why. It's like, that's probably what's happening. It's those little details that no one even understands why it's making a difference, but it is.
Or you've got weight room Tarzan who plays like Jane, and it's because he's 95% of his max gross physical potential in terms of his outputs, but it's not transferring to the field. It's because he's not prepared to, he's got the strength, but he maybe doesn't have the durability to go through 35, 40 reps every day at practice and play 60, 70 plays on game day, and be able to do so within the thresholds of his maximal, his performance zone. He's getting out of the in practice, he's getting out of the green zone where he's stressed, but still at the point where he can react and learn and grow, and he's just hanging on in practice, because he's not prepared for the repeated efforts or whatever he needs.
I think in addition to your bucket analogy is that these aren't really, they're kind of like magical buckets. They're strange buckets that, because as you get closer to filling the bucket, it requires more water to fill that bucket that much more. Going from 80 to 90% full requires significantly more water to fill that. And you could have taken the same amount of water and dumped some of that into flexibility. You could have dumped that into, grip strength. You could have dumped that into, isometric strength, that end range of motion. And you could have taken that 50, 60% improvement that you made there, but you put it all into, well, I got his back squat from 535 to 550. He still can't touch his toes. He literally can't even shake my hand. His grip is so weak, but at least he can squat an extra 10, 15 pounds.
Yeah, at least I can post that on Instagram and show the world.
Exactly. So, Nick, I want to give you a chance to outro for the people here. We talked a lot about kind of chasing endpoints in strength conditioning and how a lot of strength coaches are pursuing the wrong endpoints. You as a strength coach and the success that you've had now transitioning into private practice, working with so many top level athletes, what are the endpoints that you think that people should be chasing as strength coaches?
So it sounds so simple, but it's like stretching and working on range of motion. It needs to be like one of the number one factors. Because if you don't have a range of motion to train, then you're telling me you're just coming in to give me 100% every day, but you can only honestly give me 70. It's like, I want your body to have no limits. I don't want you to be like, well, my ankle can't move here. I shouldn't have to put you on a slant board to squat you at full depth. I shouldn't have to, the body is capable of moving a very specific way. And so my ultimate focus is getting the body back to that. I want us to be gigantic babies, or young children. We need to be just giant versions of children. I don't care if we're 225 pound solid muscle. You should be able to sit down and play in a deep squat and drop into a full split and a straddle, have these insane ranges of motion and be strong in them. That's again the scary part. It's imagine a swole baby. That'd be scary because of how good they are and how.
That's what Thomas calls me every week. I fill out my training for the week, and he's like, "You did great, swole baby."
Yeah, but I'm trying to be a giant version. So attacking those ranges is one of my main goals at first, but it's again, it's one of those things that you're gonna fight for a long time. That's not a quick fix. That's not something that you're gonna get. Okay, we can train for 6 weeks and get that, and now we can go train. It's not that. It's a continual battle the whole time. So with everything I do, whether it's an exercise or not, my focus is man, how can this exercise help your range of motion? I train in RDLs, thinking I'm getting you deeper into your hamstrings now. I want you to pull yourself deeper with your hip flexors to allow your hamstring to get a greater stretch because you're actively pulling the hip flexion. It's the way I'm having people think about an exercise will change the emphasis I'm getting on it. It's okay, I could train the RDL for just maximal strength and hit in the hinge, but it's I want to almost treat it as I'm using that extra 135 pounds to help pull deeper into the stretch, to teach my body I can go further as long as I'm controlling that weight and I'm actively taking myself to these ranges. So again, my ultimate focus for me is I just want to make the move better. And I think if coaches could get back to the focus of let's move well first, the training is the easy part after that. Like that's when training is now fun because you don't have limits. When you just like feel good all the time, sessions are better and everything is better. Like training shouldn't be hard. I think we should be able to roll out of bed and run a marathon. Like our body is capable of being that like fine tuned and that like sharp. We just need to do our best to get back to that, whatever that means, however you think that should be. Like there's probably thousands of routes to get to that. It's like if you're at least if your thought process is I'm trying to make you move better and I'm going to make sure you're not in pain anymore, then I think you're doing your athlete. You know.
I can get down with that. Thomas, anything to add?
Yeah, just sort of to tack on with that. I guess the idea that we fail at the margins of our experience, right? And so generally with physical preparation, it's we get caught up in max numbers, and when we talk about what really transfers to the field, an isolated max number doesn't. What transfers is that, like I used the phrase green zone earlier. So if what you need to do on the field falls within this green zone of your ability, you're going to put less systemic stress in the body and be able to redirect that focus and the effort into the techno-tactical portions.
It's like an efficiency thing?
Sorry?
Like an efficiency thing. Like.
Yeah. So, like with your RDL, say you're a prop in rugby and you have to be at a certain hip angle. And if you can get into that angle, but it's like the terminal range of motion for you, terminal flexion to get there, you're weaker there versus if that's in your green zone.
Correct.
And you're strong there because it's still well before the margins of your ability. You're more resilient there. You're able to work there without it taking up an enormous amount of your physiological and psychological bandwidth to operate there. It's like for somebody who like a weightlifter, I could get down into an ass to grass overhead squat, but I'm not super mobile, so it sucks and it takes some work. But whereas like some of Ryan's girls that he trains, they just pop right down there, and they've got so much extra access.
Yeah,
it's easier for them to do. It doesn't take as long. They're able to be faster and smoother through it.
I mean, I'm sure Ryan could agree. Like when you doing all your CrossFit and you're doing those handstand things, right? Like how much work was it for you to stay in that wall handstand hold versus like the girls, right? They're probably just hanging out there talking, like they're just plopped up there. Like I started throwing those in my program recently, and because I realized how bad I was when I was doing with someone else who was just chilling and hanging out, and I'm like, I should be better than you right now, and I'm not. And I'm like really struggling, and I'm like still sore from them, to be honest. And it's like, how could you be in that good shape, or like whatever we call being in shape, and I can do a skill and I'm just absolutely murdered by it. So it's like, that's where we're just constantly like, we're not there yet. We're not even close to being there yet. But like, I love that idea that like green zones, like that's my training to a whole, like to a T. Get a bigger green room and find a way to be really strong in that green room. And that is like what you should do for everything. That's how you should attack all training.
Well,
I don't really want to talk about the handstands, man. When I can jerk and hold overhead 350 pounds, and old Lexi can do it with 115, and she can handstand walk a football field, and I can't even hold myself up. Yeah, it's a little bit of a sore topic. I'm frustrated that you brought that up. Really, kind of.
Good
I'm
case
hurt.
study.
You said you wouldn't.
Training.
Yeah, I think that's like literally what the problem is. Like, man, that just makes me mad when I see that. I'm like, you know what? I should be able to do that, and because I can't, I need to figure out how. And that's how I attack training. For like the rest of my life, I'm going to be like, well, that was really hard. I need to not make that so hard. So how do I do that? All right, I'm going to give my body an opportunity to figure it out. Like, I think that's the biggest flaw is people just changing things all the time. It's like, if you put your body in a weird stimulus, but you're not hurting yourself, but you're like challenging yourself, like your body every day is solving the problem for you. At some point, you're just going to like plop in the overhead squat and be like, wow, that's like not bad anymore. It's like you've learned the skill now. You've learned how to be in that squat now. And that's when it becomes easy, and that's when it becomes fun, and that's when training gets scary,
Super easy example. How do you master the front rack position for a front squat?
You get in it.
You just get in it, and then you just stay there for a while. And the first couple times, you're trash at it. And then every sequential time after that, you're just a little bit better. And then,
Why do we treat anything else different? It's like, you can't get in a deep squat. Well, I'm going to put you in against the wall. I mean, you should see how I'm sitting right now. I don't sit like in chairs often. Like, I'm sitting on the ground. I'm more comfortable sitting in a deeper squat. And it's like, because I stay here all the time, I don't want to be in a different position. Like, this is actually more comfortable for me. And I feel like, again, I want to get to a point where I don't even need the yoga blocks. Like, I want to be able to just be sitting. But that's like, I can do that for like 5 minutes and like my legs are going numb. So it's like, I still have improvements. It's like my my nephew sits there all day playing games, bouncing around. It's like, I should be able to do that too. And I'm going to get to the point where I can.
All right, guys, you heard it here first. Part 2 of this podcast will be all of us sitting in the Saigon squat for, I don't know, what was this one? This one was an hour, so next one will probably run an hour too. Thomas, get the Bengay. It's going to be a rough day.
So you're only going to have me for about 90 seconds.
All right, guys, but as always, thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. Nick, tell the people where they can find you on Instagram, both your gym and your personal page, if they want to reach out.
Yeah, the personal page is Nomble, Nomble 28. And then that's for Instagram. The gym page is XVXIII, 3 I's. All right, Performance. It's for 1513. All right, so look me up on both. Give it a follow, and then DM if you have any questions, for real.
Yeah, give the man a follow, reach out. He's always receptive on the questions and a wealth of knowledge from all of his experience. Thomas can be found at Polly_Rocket. He likes foot pictures. And, actually, we'll just leave it wide open. Just send him whatever you want, as long as, actually, he is Tomas_Neil on Instagram. I am the _Squat Father. Often imitated, never duplicated, and at Gifted Performance on Instagram. We will see you on the next one. Like, comment, subscribe. The algorithm can only hold us down for so long. Fuck you, YouTube overlords. We're probably going to get banned for that. But on that note, stay gifted. We're out.
Peace.